this morning and for the next few weeks, we're going to have a little short series on dwellings. Where does God dwell in your life? Where does God dwell, or you see God dwell in our community? This morning we're going to talk about dwelling in victory. Dwelling in victory from Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11 through 14, and then we'll skip over to verse 24 through 28. And as I read this text, it reminded me of that some years ago when I was in a race. The car I was driving was a red car, my favorite color. There were 4 other cars in the race. We were waiting anxiously for the lights to turn from red to yellow to green. We had our engines revved up really loud with anticipation. When the light changed to yellow, my heart was just racing. I couldn't wait for it to start. And then when the light turned red, well, I let off the clutch and punched the gas, and tires began to squeal and smoke bellowed from the tires. And I could hear the RPMs of my engine getting to peak power, and that's when I hit it again and grabbed another gear, and my tires squealed again, and I could feel the force. The car began to shake, the steering wheel vibrated, the seat was shaking, and as I caught another gear and then another gear and passed the others and crossed the finish line and won the race. As I was taking my victory lap, and as I could hear the crowds cheering, it was at that time that my 50 cents ran out and the video game was over. That race was one of the best video games back in the day. I know they make better video games today, but back in the day, that was the best video game. Even though it cost twice as much as all the others, 50 cents. Who would have heard of having to pay 50 cents to play a video game back in that day? But it was worth it because it had all the sound effects, all you could feel it, and you could see it on the video screen. It was amazing. And I'm sure they have better ones today, but somehow I just lost interest in video games, or I outgrew them, or for some reason they just don't do much for me anymore. But what about church? What about Christian worship? Does it do much for us? Does it do much for us? I don't know about you, but sometimes when I go to church, it shakes and it vibrates and it moves me. Sometimes my heart, mind, body, and soul gets to racing so much with the excitement and the anticipation as the Holy Spirit begins to work within me that it's just amazing. But then there's always that fear. There's always that fear that people are just playing church. They come and they may or may not feel anything on that particular day. And then after it's over and they get out of church and they find that they didn't go anywhere. And they go home and nothing happens, and the next week they come and they play the game all over again. And eventually they lose interest. They lose interest. The author of Hebrews this morning wants us to know that the victory that Jesus Christ won on the cross of Calvary won us and redeemed us from sin and death. And our response should be more than just simulated worship. Our response should be more than just playing church. Whether we worship in a brush arbor somewhere or in a great cathedral, worship should take us places. Worship should move us from one place to another. Should move us into the very sanctuary of God in the highest heavens. Should move us into the presence of God. And in response, we should dwell in Christ's victory in the here and now. So turn with me to the 9th chapter of Hebrews. The 9th chapter of Hebrews, and we'll begin with verse 11, and that'll be on your screen as well. Hear the word of the Lord. But when Christ came as a high priest of the good things that have come, Then through the greater and perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, he entered once for all into the holy place, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls, with the sprinkling of the ashes of heifer, sanctifies those who have been defiled, so that their flesh is purified, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to worship the living God. And now jump over to verse 24. For Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with human hands, a mere copy of the true one, but he entered into the heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. Nor was it to offer himself again and again, as the high priest enters the holy place year after year with blood that is not his own. For then he would have to suffer again and again since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once for all at the end of the age to remove sin by the sacrifice of himself. And just as it is appointed for mortals to die once, and after that, judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. In order to fully understand our text in Hebrews this morning, we need to understand this mindset of the way the Levitical priesthood and sacrificial system worked in the Old Testament days. And you see, the Hebrews to which this letter is addressed assume an understanding of ancient Israel's atonement ritual during the Exodus wilderness wandering years, prior to the building of the temple in the reign of David. At that time, the place of worship was just in a tent, and inside the tent was a smaller tent, an inner tent called the Holy of Holies. And it was in the Holy of Holies that the high priest entered once a year and offered sacrifices for himself and for the people for the forgiveness of sin. The best that the priest could do would be to offer a lamb without blemish upon the altar and as a blood sacrifice and as a burnt offering. It was this act of doing and this act of sacrificing and burning and this act of sending this fragrant smoke up to heavens in hopes to satisfy God. This ritual went on year after year after year. Even after Christ died, this was still going on 30, 40, 50 years after the death of Christ. They just couldn't seem to get in their mind that they don't have to do this over and over again, that Christ died for them once and for all. And so the writer of Hebrews, he addresses this community that was spiritually fatigued and that were in danger of drifting away from the faith. Under the old covenant of worship, worship was not real. It was not the real thing. It was like my car race. It was just an imitation of heavenly things. Hebrews 9:23, just prior to our text this morning, says that at best, that form of worship was but a sketch of heavenly worship. John Wesley says it was just a pattern. It was a shadowy representation of the things of heaven. But now the writer says we're in a new age. We're in the age of Jesus Christ. Just as the old age required a sacrifice, required the blood of animals, how much more will this new age require heavenly things and require a real worship, require a better sacrifice? So unlike the Levitical priest's entry into the desert tabernacle tent made by human hands, Jesus exalted into the heavens to be in the very presence of the living God, providing believers with access to this same living God. While the Levitical priests entered the Holy of Holies for the atonement of both his and the people's sin, Jesus, the sinless one, has done this solely on our behalf. Unlike the annual need for atonement by the Levitical order, Jesus' sacrifice has permanent effectiveness, accomplishing once and for all the forgiveness of sin. Jesus not only offers the sacrifice as our high priest, but Jesus is the sacrifice.
Amen.
Is the sacrifice. Jesus is the Lamb without blemish that takes away the sins of the world, that blots out our transgressions for God's sake, where we sin no more. Within this context, sacrifice becomes a means of relationship between God and humanity. God makes the first move. It's not anything that we can do on our own. We call it grace. God reached down from the heavens and offered his only begotten Son on our behalf, that we might have life and have it abundantly. Our deal is to respond in faith, and just receive the gift. Receive the gift. The great preacher Charles Spurgeon once said, human nature's way to salvation is to do, and do. But God's way to salvation is done, and done.
Amen.
It's a done deal. It's a done deal. It's over. Christ died on your behalf and on my behalf once and for all, and it's a done deal. All we have to do is receive it. Receive it by faith, what Christ has accomplished on the cross of Calvary. The writer of Hebrews says in chapter 1, verse 2, in these last days, God has spoken to us by the Son. And Paul writes in Galatians 4, verse 4, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, in order to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as children. So the process has begun. Jesus has inaugurated a new age and fulfills the old covenant with a better hope. Hebrews 7:19 says. Fulfills it with better promises. Hebrews 8:6 says. Fulfills it with a better covenant. Hebrews 7:22 and Hebrews 8:6 say. The author of Hebrews also says that the old covenant is obsolete. In chapter 8, verse 13. But we're not finished. This passage that we read this morning introduces an eschatological version of this, an end times version, a final event with its reference to the end of the age. In verse 26 of this 9th chapter. God set salvation in motion. Verse 28 assures us of Christ's second coming, which is a new age. A new age. Christ's second appearance will not deal with sin. Christ was victorious on the cross of Calvary. That work is done. That work is finished. Rather, the second coming will be for the fulfillment of salvation for all those who the Scripture says are eagerly waiting for Christ's return. Eagerly waiting for Christ to return. You know, some years ago, I was in a car race. My car was red because that's my favorite color. But you know, the race wasn't real. It wasn't real. It was a simulator. I wasn't in a real car. The car was just a box. It had a seat, it had a steering wheel, it had a video screen. It just looked like a car. It felt like a car. It even, you saw visions of a car. It made the sounds of the cars. You could hear the tires squeal. You could hear the engine race. But it wasn't a real car. I wasn't a real car race driver. I was just a college student looking for entertainment. But Christ is real. Christ is real. The victory won on the cross of Calvary is very real. The victory is meant for us the victory is meant to be experienced by everyone in worship every week. We are meant to dwell in that victory every day. That victory is not entertainment, but it is intended to take us places, to take us to new heights, to new levels in our faith. It is meant to help us accept God's forgiveness for ourselves and help us forgive others. It's meant to let that victory dwell in our very lives, to dwell in our marriages, and to dwell in our jobs, and to dwell in our families, and to dwell in our communities, and to dwell in our churches, and to dwell in every aspect of our total lives. As we eagerly wait for Christ's return, where are you dwelling in Christ's victory in and over your life? What difference does it make in your life that you have this relationship with Jesus Christ? It's no game. It's real. It's real. So as we close, I have an assignment for you. Next week, as you go through next week, I want you to think of what difference that victory that Christ won on the cross on your behalf makes in your life. What difference does it make in your life that you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And I want you to share that victory story. Share that victory story with someone in your circle of friends or the group that you meet with, or if you don't have anybody like that, email me or text me and tell me that victory story. How you experienced the victory of Jesus Christ in your life as we go about our week next week. And then we'll meet again here next week and see where Christ dwells again in another place. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for your word today, and we thank you for your goodness and your grace in Jesus Christ. We thank you for the victory that Christ won on the cross of Calvary on our behalf. A free gift of grace. All we have to do is receive it, accept it, allow it to nourish our innermost being. That we can live every day of our lives in that victory and have victory over everything that we encounter this next week and beyond. Because of Christ, we have life and we have it abundantly.